Hi, my name is Ivy, and I remember the night my family decided I was no longer one of them. It was a December evening, the kind where the ocean breeze slips through the high-rise balconies, carrying the taste of salt into the room. I walked into my parents' apartment on the 12th floor. From the outside, it looked warm and inviting, a hot pot steaming in the middle of the dining table, TV murmuring in the background, the golden glow of a lamp reflecting off familiar faces. But inside me, something was already breaking. For years, I had been sending money home, monthly without fail. My parents said it was for the mortgage. Without you, they told me, the bank would take this apartment away. And I believed them. I worked double shifts, skipped vacations, ate instant noodles just to make sure the money was always there on time. But last week, I found the papers. The mortgage had been cleared 2 years ago. My money never touched the bank. It went to trips, to parties, to debts that weren't mine. I sat at the table that night, chopsticks in my hand, my pulse pounding. I told myself maybe I was wrong. But as I looked at their faces, smiling, eating, as if nothing had ever been sacrificed, I knew I couldn't stay silent. I put my chopsticks down. My voice was steady, though my chest ached. Dad, Mom, I know the money I've been sending hasn't been used for the mortgage. I checked the records. The loan was paid off 2 years ago. The air froze. My brother was the first to react. He laughed, loud, sharp, cruel. So, the little saint finally figured it out. You think you're special just because you've been sending money? Guess what? If you give it, we spend it. End of story. My mother slammed her bowl down, eyes narrowing. If that's how you see it, Ivy, then don't call yourself our daughter anymore. My father said nothing. He just sighed, staring into his glass of beer as if drowning in it. His silence hurt more than any insult. I looked around the table. These were the people I'd broken my back for, the people I thought I belonged to, but their faces were closed doors, cold, untouchable. I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the tiles. All right, I said quietly. If that's the choice, then from tonight on, I'll choose myself too. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. I picked up my coat, walked to the door, and stepped into the long hallway. The door shut behind me with a heavy thud, like the closing of a chapter I hadn't realized was ending. Outside, the wind hit my face, sharp with the smell of the sea, but instead of stinging, it felt like air, real air, for the first time in years. That night, I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just a woman, with a truth they wanted to bury. What I didn't know was that this truth would become my weapon, and that one day soon, I wouldn't just survive without them. I would take back the inheritance they thought I'd never claim. 2 weeks. That's how long it had been since I walked out of my parents' apartment, leaving behind the echo of slammed doors and a family that no longer claimed me. 14 days of silence, no calls, no texts, no explanations, from me or from them. At first, the silence felt like relief, like a window had cracked open in a room where I had been suffocating for years. I started sleeping through the night. I cooked meals for myself. I walked along the shore in the mornings, listening to the rhythm of waves instead of the constant hum of family demands. But then the messages started. The first came from my mother. Ivy, this isn't just about you. We need to talk. Simple. Neutral. But I could feel the ice under the words. That same evening, another message. Your father and I are worried. Please call us back. I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew what worried really meant. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money. By the third day, the tone shifted. This time, it was my brother. Wow, can't believe you're ghosting your own family, real classy. Then another from Mom a few hours later. Your father's health isn't great. The bills are piling up. You're our only hope. No apology, No recognition of the night I was cast out, just pressure, guilt, expectation. I sat in my tiny apartment kitchen, staring at the screen. The overhead light flickered. A half-empty mug of coffee had gone cold beside me. I wanted to answer, to scream, to explain, but my hands stayed frozen, because deep down, I knew answering wouldn't change anything. It never had. On day 5, I got a voicemail from my father. He almost never called. His voice startled me when I pressed play. "Ivy," he said, flat, emotionless. "I don't like getting involved in drama, but this is your responsibility. We're your family. You make real money. We're counting on you." Real money. As if that was all I was to them, a wallet with a beating heart. I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to rub away the pressure building behind my eyes. That night, I opened my laptop, not to escape, but to remind myself of the truth. I logged into my bank, scrolled through page after page of transactions, rent-sized transfers, month after month, year after year, thousands of dollars. Every time they said the mortgage was overdue, every time they claimed Dad's prescriptions weren't covered, every time my brother said he was drowning in debt. And I believed them, because that's what good daughters do. But now I couldn't ignore the doubt crawling through me. I opened a new tab, typed in the bank's website, the one that held the mortgage. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. Did I even have access? Then I remembered, years ago they had added my name as co-signer, back when Dad's credit was too low to qualify. I entered my information, answered the security questions, and then I was in. What I saw nearly knocked the breath out of me. 5 months delinquent. 5. I had been sending money every month, enough to cover everything and more, but the mortgage hadn't been paid in nearly half a year. My pulse pounded in my ears. I scrolled through the statements, line after line of proof. Where was the money going? Vacations? Designer clothes? Or maybe straight into my brother's endless debts? I snapped the laptop shut, my reflection staring back from the dark screen. It wasn't fear I felt, it was betrayal. Cold, sharp, undeniable. I picked up my phone and dialed my father. He answered on the second ring. "I just checked the mortgage," I said. My voice shook, but not from weakness. "It's 5 months behind." Silence. Then finally, "Things have been tight. I've been sending enough every month," I said. My throat tightened. "Where did it go?" Another pause. Longer this time. "It went to other things." "Like what?" He didn't answer right away. Then I heard my mother's voice in the background, louder, cutting. "Don't act like we never sacrificed for you. We gave you everything. You wouldn't even have that job if it weren't for us." I laughed bitterly into the phone. "You mean the job I got working 3 part-time shifts while living on canned soup in college?" And then, click, the line went dead. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at the silver key pendant that hung on the wall by my door. My mother had given it to me when I first moved out. She said it meant I would always have a place to come home to. Now, it felt like a lie made of metal. The next morning, I met Mia, my oldest friend, the one person who had always called out the way my family treated me. She sat across from me at a cafe near the marina, flipping through the bank statements I had printed. "This isn't just shady," she said. "Ivy, you're not just helping them. You've basically been their lender. You have legal standing here." I blinked. The thought had never crossed my mind. Mia leaned forward. Her voice was steady. "It's time to draw a line, stop the payments, demand accountability, and if you have to, get a lawyer." Her words scared me. Not because she was wrong, but because I knew that once I took that step, there would be no going back. That night, I typed out a message. "I will no longer send financial support until I receive a full written accounting of where my contributions have gone." 22 words. No apology, no excuses. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I pressed send. The silence that followed felt heavier than the chaos before, and I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I thought the silence would last. I thought after I sent that message, my family would rage in private, maybe sulk, maybe stew in their own resentment. I was wrong. They didn't just get angry. They declared war. The first strike came less than 12 hours later. A message from my mother. You've abandoned us. I don't have a daughter anymore. Just like that. No hesitation. No space for reflection. It felt like she'd taken a knife and cut me clean out of the family tree. 5 minutes later, my father followed up with a single word. Pathetic. The same word he used when I was 8 years old, standing on stage after losing a spelling bee. Back then, I believed him. Back then, I tried harder. But now, that one word didn't break me. It hardened me. I deleted the messages without replying. For a while, I buried myself in work, meetings, spreadsheets, data that didn't accuse me or demand sacrifices, numbers that obeyed logic instead of guilt. But even in the safety of my office cubicle, I felt it, that hum in my chest, the one that told me something was building, something was coming. And then it did. It was a gray Wednesday when I noticed the shift. I walked into the office kitchen for coffee, and conversations died mid-sentence. Smiles were too polite, eyes too quick to look away. I told myself I was imagining it, until my phone buzzed, a text from Mia. Check Facebook, now. My stomach dropped. I clicked the link she sent. It was a screenshot. My brother had posted, public for the world to see. It breaks my heart to admit this, but Ivy has abandoned our family in our time of need. After everything our parents sacrificed for her, she's chosen money over love. Please keep them in your prayers as they suffer this betrayal. Attached to the post was an old photo. Me at a family barbecue 5 years ago, smiling with a plate of food. The caption read, "This is what betrayal looks like." My blood went cold. The comments were worse. How could she do this to her own parents? Some people forget where they come from. Knew she was always selfish. Names I recognized, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, old neighbors, even church friends of my mother's, all piling on, none of them knowing the truth. By lunchtime, whispers filled the office halls. A coworker sent me a concerned email. Another avoided eye contact entirely. But the real blow came that afternoon when my boss called me into her office. Her tone was calm, professional, but I could hear the steel beneath it. "Ivy," she said, "your mother reached out to the company." I froze. "She what?" "She sent an email to HR," my boss explained carefully. "She suggested you've been funneling family money into your personal accounts. She implied there might be financial misconduct that could reflect poorly on us." The world tilted under me. "That's not true," I stammered. "Not even close." "I believe you," she said quickly. "But HR has to investigate. Please keep all your documents handy." I walked out of her office in a daze. My body was moving. Back to my desk, through the parking lot, into my car. But my mind was spinning. They weren't just angry. They weren't just cutting me off. They were trying to destroy me. That night, I called Mia. My voice trembled when she answered. "They went to my job," I whispered. "They're trying to ruin me." "They're not just mad," she said flatly. "They've lost control of you, so now they're trying to take away your name." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was being dramatic. But deep down, I knew she was right. I opened my laptop, drafted an email, short, sharp, precise, subject line, "Cease and desist." If you continue to publicly defame me or interfere with my employment, I will pursue legal action. You are not entitled to share my private financial information, nor to harass me in public or professional spaces. All future communication must go through a legal representative. I read it once, twice. My hand hovered over the mouse, then I pressed send. The silence after was thick, not peaceful, Not yet. It was the silence before a storm breaks wide open. The next morning, I walked past the jewelry shop on the corner. In the window, on a velvet stand, was a silver key pendant, almost identical to the one my mother had given me years ago, the one that once meant I always had a place to come home to. Now I looked at it and whispered under my breath, "You can't lock me in your story anymore." I wasn't their daughter anymore, not in their eyes, but maybe, just maybe, that was freedom. The morning after I sent the cease and desist email, I woke up with a single thought. If they wanted to treat me like nothing but a bank, then I would start acting like a lender, not a daughter, not a scapegoat. A lender, with rights, with records, with proof. I poured coffee into a chipped mug, sat at my kitchen table, and began making calls. The first was to my bank. I asked for every transaction I had made over the past 3 years that referenced my parents' mortgage account. The woman on the phone was professional, almost gentle, as if she'd heard this kind of story before. "You've sent more than enough to cover the loan twice over," she said. My throat tightened. "Can you confirm? Am I still on the mortgage?" "Yes," she replied. "You're listed as co-signer, which means technically you could qualify to assume the loan entirely." Assume the loan. The words hit me like a bell, reverberating deep inside my chest. For years I had been terrified of that loan. It had been the reason I worked myself raw, the excuse my family used to keep me tethered. Now, for the first time, I realized it wasn't just my burden, it was my leverage. That afternoon, I met Mia at our usual cafe by the marina. I spread out the statements across the table. Pages and pages of transfers, bank stamps, receipts. Mia whistled low. "Ivy, this isn't charity. This is investment. You've been funding their life. You're not just the helper. You're the one holding it all together." Her words sank in. For so long, I'd seen myself as the outsider, desperate for scraps of belonging. Now, in black and white, I saw the truth. They had needed me far more than I had ever needed them. Mia leaned closer, her eyes sharp. "It's time you stopped playing defense. You need a lawyer." The thought terrified me. A lawyer meant war. A lawyer meant there would be no going back. But hadn't my family already drawn the line? That evening, Mia introduced me to Rachel, a real estate attorney in her 40s with sharp eyes and a voice that carried no nonsense. She flipped through my documents quickly, scanning each page with the focus of someone who had done this too many times. Finally, she looked up. "I've seen this before," she said. "Not uncommon, unfortunately. Children who pay for years, only to be erased when they ask questions." I swallowed. "So, do I even have a case?" Rachel leaned back, folded her hands. "You don't just have a case, Ivy. You have standing. You've carried the mortgage. You're on the paperwork. Emotionally, they may have cut you out, but legally, you're still in." Something loosened in my chest. Not joy, not relief, just oxygen. We mapped out the next steps. 1. Request a full accounting of the mortgage from the lender. 2. File to assume the loan entirely under my name. 3. Deliver legal notice of my interest in the property to my parents. Each step sounded terrifying, but for the first time in years, it also sounded like freedom. Back at home, I opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was the silver key pendant my mother had given me years ago. I hadn't worn it since the night of the fight. I picked it up. Once it had felt like a promise. Now it felt like leverage, like proof of what I had once believed in and what I was leaving behind. I tucked it into a velvet pouch, not to wear, but to keep, not as a chain, but as a reminder. The next week blurred into a storm of paperwork, signatures, and phone calls. Rachel filed the documents. The bank confirmed my payment history. Each confirmation came like a stone laid into a new foundation. This one mine, not theirs. And then, one Thursday morning, the final letter arrived. I opened it with trembling hands. Confirmation of loan assumption. My name. My responsibility. My control. I sat at my kitchen table, the papers spread out before me. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't ache. For the first time, I wasn't the discarded daughter. I was the one holding the deed. That evening, I picked up the phone. My mother answered on the third ring. Her voice was clipped, impatient. Finally decided to call back? I want a meeting, I said, at the apartment. You, Dad, and my brother. Tonight. She laughed bitterly. What, you think you can just walk in and... You'll want to hear what I have to say. Silence. Then, finally, fine. 7:30. I hung up, staring at the documents on the table. The papers weren't just legal proof. They were my shield, my weapon, my liberation. For years, they had told me I owed them everything. But now, I realized, everything was already mine. The apartment looked the same as it always had, peeling wallpaper, the faint smell of dust and old wood. But that night, it felt like enemy territory. Ivy stepped inside, the deed tucked carefully into her leather bag. The living room was dim, only one lamp on, casting shadows across the faces that had once been her home. Her mother sat rigid on the sofa, arms crossed. Her father leaned against the wall, silent, unreadable. Her brother, Daniel, sprawled in the armchair, smirking like he'd already won. Well, her mother said, her voice sharp, the prodigal daughter returns? Here to apologize? Ivy didn't sit. She stood in the center of the room, back straight, hands steady. No, she said quietly. I'm here to tell you the truth. Her brother laughed, bitter and cruel. The truth? You mean the story where you're the victim and we're the monsters? Save it, Ivy. Everyone knows what you've done. Ivy pulled the documents from her bag and laid them carefully on the coffee table. The white paper gleamed under the lamplight. Those are bank records, she said. Every transfer I've made into this mortgage for the past 3 years. Every payment I've covered when you said you couldn't. And here, she placed the final letter on top, is confirmation that the mortgage is now in my name. The room went silent. Her father's eyes flicked to the papers, then away. Her mother's face tightened, lips pressing into a thin line. Daniel's smirk faltered for the first time. I'm not here to beg, Ivy continued. Her voice was low, steady, the kind of tone that didn't need to shout to be heard. I'm not here to fight for scraps of love. I'm here because you've been using me, and now that ends. Her mother shot to her feet. How dare you, after everything we sacrificed for you? No, Ivy cut in, her tone sharper than she intended. You didn't sacrifice for me. I sacrificed for you. I worked double shifts. I drained my savings. I let you call me ungrateful, selfish, pathetic, while I carried the roof over your head. Don't twist that into something noble. Her father's voice rumbled low and bitter. So what now? You think you can throw us out? Your own parents? Ivy met his gaze. The man who had once towered over her now seemed smaller, his anger a shadow of its former power. No, she said. I'm not throwing anyone out, but I am setting terms. If you want to live here, you'll contribute. Rent, utilities, repairs. No more free rides. If you can't, then you'll need to find another place. Daniel scoffed. Unbelievable. You've turned into some kind of landlord. Ivy turned to him, her eyes cold. Better a landlord than a doormat. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with years of swallowed words finally unleashed. Her mother's voice broke through, trembling with rage. You're tearing this family apart. Ivy shook her head slowly. Number, I'm just refusing to let you tear me apart any longer. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of her words hung in the air, pressing down on them all. Finally, her father exhaled, a long, weary sound. He sank into the armchair across from Daniel, eyes fixed on the floor. Her mother turned away, her shoulders shaking, not with tears but with fury she couldn't spit out. And Daniel? He stared at the papers on the table, his jaw tight, his smirk gone. Ivy gathered her bag, slid the strap over her shoulder. "I'll give you time to think," she said. "But understand this. Whatever story you've told about me, whatever lies you've spread, they don't matter anymore. I have the proof, and I have the deed." She walked toward the door, her heels echoing against the wooden floorboards. At the threshold, she paused, glancing back one last time. "For years, you said I owed you everything. But the truth is, you owed me, and now the debt is paid." She closed the door behind her, the latch clicking softly. Outside, the night air was cool against her skin. She breathed deeply, the first real breath she had taken in years. Behind her, in that dim apartment, her family would rage, scheme, and maybe even plot their next move. But for the first time, Ivy wasn't afraid. She had shifted the balance. She wasn't the discarded daughter anymore. She was the one who had finally walked away on her own terms. The fallout began almost immediately. 2 days after the confrontation, Ivy's phone buzzed nonstop with messages. Old relatives she hadn't heard from in years suddenly reached out, not to ask how she was, but to scold her. How could you betray your parents like this? They gave you everything, and this is how you repay them. Blood is thicker than money, Ivy. You'll regret this. The words stung, but only for a moment, because beneath the accusations she saw the truth. Her parents had wasted no time rewriting the story. To them, she wasn't the daughter who paid their mortgage. She was the thief who had stolen their home. And they were spreading that story to anyone who would listen. At the grocery store, Ivy felt the stares. At work, a colleague pulled her aside and asked awkwardly if it was true she had kicked her parents out. Even Mia's own mother had called to say gently that she should try to make peace before it was too late. It was a tidal wave of shame, carefully crafted, perfectly executed. But Ivy had something she'd never had before. Proof. One evening, she sat in her kitchen with Mia, scrolling through the avalanche of texts. "They're trying to bury me," she whispered. Mia leaned across the table, eyes sharp. "Then you stop hiding. You bring the truth into the light." The thought terrified Ivy. She had lived her entire life in silence, afraid of speaking out, afraid of confirming the narrative that she was difficult. But now, silence was exactly what they were counting on. So she gathered the documents again, bank transfers, receipts, the loan assumption letter, and she wrote. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't a sob story. It was a statement, clear, factual, unshakable. She explained how she had paid the mortgage, how she had been erased, how she had finally taken control. She didn't name-call. She didn't beg for sympathy. She simply told the truth. Mia helped her polish it, cut out anything that sounded emotional or vengeful. When it was done, Ivy posted it publicly on her social media. For a while, nothing happened, just silence. Then, slowly, comments trickled in. First from acquaintances, then from old school friends, then from complete strangers. Good for you. This took so much courage. They should be thanking you, not smearing you. And then, an unexpected message. Her cousin Lila, someone who had always seemed distant, wrote, "I believe you. They did the same thing to me when I tried to cut ties. You're not alone." The knot in Ivy's chest loosened. For the first time, she realized the shame wasn't hers to carry. It belonged to them. But her parents didn't take the blow quietly. Within days, Daniel showed up at her building, pounding on the door. "You think a few papers make you powerful?" he sneered when she cracked the door open. "You're nothing without us. Nothing." Ivy held her ground, her hand steady on the lock. "You don't get to define me anymore, Daniel. Leave, or I call the police. For a second, she thought he might hit the door, force his way in, but then his smirk returned, brittle and ugly. Enjoy your little victory. It won't last. He left, footsteps echoing down the hall. Ivy locked the door, her heart racing, but her hand didn't shake, not this time. That night, she sat at her desk, staring at the deed again. It was more than property. It was proof that she could stand alone, proof that she could break free. Her parents had built their power on silence, on manipulation, on fear, and for years it had worked. But now, Ivy realized, the silence was broken. Her voice was out there. Her story was out there. And no matter what smear campaign they waged, no matter how much they raged behind closed doors, she had shifted the balance. Still, she knew the battle wasn't over. Because families like hers didn't surrender. They plotted, they waited. They struck where it hurt the most, and Ivy could already feel it. The real war was just beginning. The phone call came late on a Sunday evening. Ivy was sitting at her kitchen table sipping tea when her lawyer's voice came through the line. "Ivy, I wanted you to hear it from me first. Your parents, they filed a petition. They're contesting the deed transfer." For a moment, Ivy felt the old weight press down on her chest. The fear of losing everything. The instinct to fold, to apologize, to give in. But then, she remembered the documents stacked neatly in her drawer, the trail of receipts and records that told the story in black and white. She breathed deeply. "Let them," she said quietly. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old paper, its halls echoing with footsteps. Ivy walked in with Mia at her side, a slim folder of evidence tucked under her arm. Across the room, her parents sat stiffly, Daniel lounging between them with a smug grin. When the judge entered, the room hushed. Her parents' lawyer spoke first, painting Ivy as a manipulative daughter who had tricked her aging parents into signing away their home. The words dripped with venom, rehearsed to sound convincing. But when it was Ivy's turn, she stood, hands steady, voice clear. "I didn't trick anyone," she said, her gaze fixed on the judge. "For 3 years, I made every payment on that mortgage. I worked double shifts. I drained my savings. I carried this family when no one else would, and I have every receipt to prove it." She laid the papers out one by one. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, the official letter from the bank. Each page was a weapon, each page a piece of armor. Her father shifted uncomfortably. Her mother's jaw tightened. Daniel, for once, had no words. When Ivy finished, the room was silent. The judge leaned back, scanning the documents. Finally, he looked up. "The records are clear. The mortgage payments were made solely by Ms. Ivy Walker. The transfer was lawful. Petition denied." It was over. The gavel struck, and with it the weight Ivy had carried for years cracked and fell away. Her parents rose, faces red with fury, whispering furiously to each other. Daniel shot her a glare sharp enough to cut steel. "You think you've won?" he hissed as they passed her. "You'll regret this." But Ivy didn't flinch. She simply met his eyes and said, softly but firmly, "No, I'll never regret choosing myself." They left in a storm of anger, their footsteps fading down the corridor. Ivy remained standing in the empty courtroom, the silence around her thick and sacred. For the first time, she didn't feel like prey. She felt free. Outside, sunlight streamed through the courthouse steps. Mia hugged her tight, laughter breaking through tears. "You did it," Mia whispered. "It's really over." Ivy nodded, her throat tight. "Yeah, it is." That night, back in her apartment, Ivy sat by the window with the deed resting on her lap. She thought of the years spent silenced, the endless battles behind closed doors, the voices that told her she was nothing. But those voices no longer ruled her. She had faced them, she had stood her ground, and she had won. Her phone buzzed again, another message from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, expecting more venom, but instead it was from her cousin Lila again. "I read what you posted. I saw what happened today. You're stronger than any of them ever gave you credit for. If you ever want family, you still have me." Ivy smiled, a small, trembling smile. For the first time in years, the word family didn't feel like a cage. It felt like possibility. She looked out at the city lights, her reflection staring back at her through the glass. Her parents might rage. Daniel might threaten. The smear campaign might echo for a while longer. But Ivy had shifted the balance forever. She wasn't the discarded daughter anymore. She was the woman who had taken her life back, on her own terms. And nothing could take that away. In the end, Ivy did not just reclaim a house. She reclaimed her voice, her dignity, her freedom. The family that silenced her tried to bury her truth, but when she finally spoke, the lies crumbled. Sometimes, blood does not mean loyalty. Sometimes, the greatest betrayal comes from those who share your last name. And sometimes, survival means choosing yourself, even if it means walking away from the people who should have loved you the most. Ivy's story is not just about loss, it is about power, about breaking cycles of silence, about proving that even when your own family turns against you, you can still rise stronger than before. Because in the darkness of betrayal, the bravest act is to keep the light of truth alive, no matter the cost. Pause. Dramatic drop in tone. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the hidden, the dramatic, and the unthinkable truths people live through. Until next time, stay vigilant. Because sometimes the scariest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from family.